Hi, my name is Eva Adams. I'm an American in Berlin. I'm a news junkie, um, a vocal jazz teacher, semi-retired, and I'm a patriotic American who uh, can't stand it anymore in terms of the disinformation that's destroying our country. So I want to talk about what's behind the disinformation from a perspective I'm getting from 5 years of looking deeply into the strategies that are being used against us. And I have done this before. This is a, in some ways a repeat to my friends that are in Democrats Abroad or the Blue Dot family with John Breadfoe or the Don Khan Terminate Trumpism family with all kinds of wonderful people and other ones that are new. So forgive me if I repeat myself, if you happen to see what I did 2 years ago. I also have fibromyalgia, which is a chronic pain condition, and that slows me down enormously. And that's the reason I haven't done this for a long time. The, the pandemic kept me down, and I'm trying to get myself back up and get a little bit of courage to talk again, because what's going on right now in terms of the disinformation is growing. I just saw that there was a poll that 76% of Americans are angry with what's going on in the country. That anger is by design, and that's what I want to talk about. Um, it goes back to at least uh, the 90s. It's actually much further back than that. But when Putin decided that he was going to interfere in American politics, then things really have progressively gotten worse in terms of the way he's used um, the extremism in the United States. And that's partly because of a strategy designed by Alexander Dugin, who wrote the book, The Foundations of Geopolitics. So what I'm trying to get at is that Duginism was created and turned into Putinism strategy, which was then implanted in the Trump cabal and created Trumpism. So Duginism is Putinism is Trumpism strategy that is affecting all of us and the world and our emotions. Let me read a quote from what the book is about. It says in the book, The Foundations of Geopolitics, from Alexander Dugin, that to try and control or to weaken the United States, Russia should use its special services within the borders of the United States to fuel instability and separatism. For instance, provoke Afro-American racists. Russia should introduce geopolitical disorder into internal American activity, encouraging all kinds of separatism and ethnic, social, and racial conflicts, actively supporting all dissident movements, extremist, racist, and sectarian groups, thus destabilizing internal political processes in the United States. It would also make sense simultaneously to support isolationist tendencies in American politics. So that's the strategy that was handed to Trump. And it's within the realm of possibility. They did that in part through Manafort. Paul Manafort was the campaign strategist, right? But before that, he was in the Ukraine working for a real live dictator, Yanukovych. And so he was using dictator strategy, right? And that dictator ended up having to flee to Russia, where, as far as I know, that's where he still is. So he was good friends with Putin. And so that's one thing that's pretty clear, that there's connections there. There are many, many more connections with Trump himself since the 1980s. And I've been looking up the authors of books by investigative journalists so that all of this is documented. All you have to do is look up Craig Unger, Luke Harding, or Seth Hetina, or Hetina, I don't know how to say his name. And they go deeply into the ways that Trump was courted by the Russians since the 1980s. Now, I can't go into much detail today about all that. However, I just want to make it clear that this is based on research that involves scholars and people who have high credibility. Other people who have looked into these strategies are Malcolm Nance, Jason Stanley, and Timothy Snyder, professors at Yale, who have books. And I've had the pleasure of actually meeting Timothy Snyder for a wee bit when he was here promoting one of his books. They are highly knowledgeable about how this came down, but unfortunately, they tend to throw up their arms because there aren't too many listeners. That's been a problem I've had. I've been afraid of doing this because I wouldn't get too many listeners to the fact that we've got this phenomenon going on that's so huge. It's global. But now it's taking over the United States in such aggravated, aggressive, mean, evil ways that I can't be silent in terms of why that's happening. Since it's designed and it's deliberate, it's intentional, and it's been taken on by the entire, well, not exactly the entire, but the vast majority of the Republican Party, and especially its leadership. And that is the most dangerous thing that's happened to our democracy in our history. Now, I've heard a pundit just last night saying, oh, the great enemies are, that we have to face now are global warming and cybersecurity and what was the other one? The pandemic, maybe terrorism, but probably more domestic terrorism. Well, I'm sorry, but all of the solutions for dealing with those problems are being blocked by the strategy of disinformation, which is what I'm saying: Trumpism, Putinism, Duginism. Go after the extremists, rile them all up, get them going, get them outraged, and get them outraged at one another. And this is where, as somebody who's active on social media, primarily Facebook, I watch it daily in terms of our anger and how easily we fall into what they want us to do, which is to fight with one another. Now, in terms of the right-wing trolls, I've been looking at that for quite a long time. And I've been going, well, I don't know. It started out that a lot of them were Russian trolls. But when you have the strategy taken over by Americans in terms of maybe troll farms, who knows who's paying them, who knows if it's coming from campaign strategists, you get it, you get the pattern going of you get the talking points, and then you get the the rage comments, and then you get the fights. And this pattern is everywhere, and it's got to the point where there's so many volunteers now, it doesn't matter if there's any paid trolls. You don't know if they're real people, paid trolls, or foreign people that are just planting the seeds for all of this, because it's gotten out of control. It's everywhere. The latest piece of ugliness that I heard this morning was they deliberately put a rumor into the net that a dozen or so F-22 pilots quit because they were told that they had to get the vaccine by 10 a.m. or they would be court-martialed, which is an absolute and total lie. This was coming from Daniel Dale, a fact checker for CNN. And, it doesn't matter to them if it spreads to Fox News and all that kind of stuff. Maybe it'll get debunked, maybe it won't. But there will be enough people to buy into the lie that you just add to the demonization of the Biden administration. So truth doesn't matter. Just put the lies out there and somebody will believe them, and it doesn't matter if they're debunked or not, because, it's about provoking extremism. And they've really done it. They've really done it. Bah. Now, everybody talks about the big lie being the election was stolen, is the big lie. Well, unfortunately, there's probably lots more, but there's 3 big, fat lies. And those include, going back to the first lie, is Russians did not collude with the Trump administration or the Trump campaign. Well, the problem was, it said in the Mueller report they did, but the way they do it is not illegal, and so they didn't have any way to really go after it. So they just turned it around and said, oh, there was no collusion. But of course there was. And, Russia had nothing to do with any of this, all right? So the thing is, now that the strategy has been so adopted by the entire Republican Party, yeah, well, sure, it's not the Russians anymore. So that's all been boom, 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 it's out. but it's the Russian strategy all along. So that's the first lie. And then you have the second lie, which is affecting the world, that COVID is not dangerous. That lie. And everything that goes with it. Vaccines don't work, masks don't work, it's a hoax, the pandemic, all of that. That's one single huge lie that has killed hundreds of thousands of people, or if you look globally, because they are spreading that lie in many, many countries, including the one that really fell for it was Brazil. Peru was pretty bad as well, but I mean, you had still factions in all the countries in Europe that got hit. And thank goodness here I am in Germany, and it's not as bad, even though I know people who fell for it. But primarily the cooperation is there, and so things are getting better. So anyway, yeah. Lie one is Russia doesn't have anything to do with the disinformation strategy. Number two, the pandemic is not dangerous. And then number three, the election was stolen, which is now something they're using as deliberate strategy in California and in Brazil for Bolsonaro. Isn't that amazing? So you had, Trump's Jason Miller go down to Brazil to work with them on the strategy for, if he has trouble with the election, he can just do the same thing that Trump did. And they'll help them because they have a platform called Getter, Gettr. And that one, yay, they're able to, they want to use and make money off it globally. Great. Let's just destroy democracy everywhere, which is the goal. The goal is actually not to entirely destroy democracy, but to create systems that are corrupt and greedy and dishonest. So the neo-fascism of today, they're using fascist propaganda tactics that go back many long decades, including Goebbels, Hitler, and all of that strategy. It's all there. But their goals are a little bit different because they are just more into the corruption and ways to make money for the supporters or the fans or the ones that put the money back into the campaigns. Like if you take a look at what's going on in Florida with Regeneron, and the fact that big donors to DeSantis are making great money from the Regeneron treatment centers. But how can they keep making money? There's only one way for them to keep making money, and that's to have more COVID patients. They need to have as many people get sick as possible in order to make more money. And that strategy is, unfortunately, I haven't read any investigative journalists, but I believe, it's my opinion, this is all my opinion, that particular strategy is being used with ivermectin, or however you pronounce it, ivermectin. They did it before with remdesivir, with hydroxychloroquine, whatever the names are. All of those treatments, if it's Joseph Merkel and the vitamin C guy, he can sell all their stuff. There's a place called Natural News, and then, they're all profiting off of people getting sick from the virus. And that, I mean, there was even a couple of them that were there on 1/6 at one of the rallies that had a huge mansion. They were selling treatments and all this other kind of stuff. And, and so, of course, they don't want masks. Of course, they don't want vaccines because they can't make money if we eradicate the virus. And then you have the second reason to make people sick and die, 10,000 a week of the unvaccinated dying a week. And the second reason is because then Biden can't succeed. He's a failure. And then you've got the third reason for why this strategy is so important, which is makes everybody really, really angry. So, what does it say here? So they are actively supporting all dissident movements to destabilize internal political processes in the United States. Make them angry. That's what we are all supposed to do. And this is, I fall into it. It's natural. We have absolutely natural emotions to react to this with anger or with sadness or with depression, which has happened to me over and over and over again as well. And I try to shake it by saying, okay, we can get above this. Look at Biden got above this. Biden doesn't talk about all this kind of stuff. However, at this point now, I really want the disinformation machine exposed. Who is behind it? Who is running it? Why are they doing it? I want every American to know about it. I want it to be something that is a part of history that is ingrained into every single American, that we have fallen for a Russian propaganda strategy that was taken on by a president that is out to weaken and destroy our country. We got rid of him for a time, but now they're all back at it in bigger, stranger, uglier ways, killing off people regularly, and to the point we're all freaking out. I mean, to write a law in Texas to promote vigilante justice and try to say that's the way to go. Oh, come on. I mean, informants, snitches. This is the stuff of the Stasi from East Germany, where, Putin was a direct part of that. He was right here in Berlin and Dresden, behind getting people to inform on those terrible people who wanted to leave the country. Ooh, they had to get them arrested and put into prison, like a girlfriend of mine. And this is anyway. They do it in different ways that are a little bit trickier, a little bit more subtle, but they're creating an environment to make us hate each other. So now I've got pages of notes here, like they all look like this. I'm going to try to see if I can move on quickly, because I want to move into a different way of dealing with all this, which, like I said, is exposure. And I've been really reluctant to present my major project ideas because because there's two reasons. One, I'm afraid they'll be successful, and one, I'm afraid they'll fail. So if I'm successful in getting anybody to buy into one of these two projects, then it means I will have to work with them, and I don't know if I can because I'm physically just such a mess. But I still have to say something and not get into my fear. And if nobody's listening, then okay, nobody's listening. I have to accept that too. But here we are. These are my two projects. I would like to see us create a website, possibly as an actual organization, but just a website. I draft named it the Democratic Debunker. And the whole purpose of doing this website is to lay out what I'm talking about in a clear structure so that you can take a look at what's going on with the lies that they're putting out and if possible current. This is the current lie. Come on, who's the one on the other side, on our side, that's my hands that's debunking it? Who are the fact checkers? And to really kind of create a structure so that you can always have a place to go to see, yes, we are on the side of truth. We are fighting for it, you know, and because by and large, rather than just raging against them all the time, what we need to do is support, is praise, is stand behind those who are fighting for the truth and make that activity of the truth be more impactful than their lies, and not engage in the constant bickering which is designed for us to do. I mean, we have to get our emotions out, so it's not so bad, and I don't mind that we do it with each other and all that other kind of stuff. But when it affects us to the point where it cripples us, then we have to have a new place to go. That's what I'm trying to create for myself, and that's what I'm trying to create for other people. And that's why I was hoping maybe we can start this organization, the Democratic Debunker, or this website, so that we can start in a clear and simple way with links to the articles, but without it being clogged by big, long explanations. If you want to go for the explanations, fine, but primarily headlines that are not, because people don't have time. They don't have time to go through all the detail. That's one of the reasons why their strategy works, because they just use their little quickie slogans and boom, that's it. I wanted to do a list of the 10 myths that were long before Trump that they're still attached to, which is one, on the Second Amendment, Democrats want to take all your guns. Two, Democrats are weak on national security and law and order. Three, that we're pro-abortion, when in fact we are pro-choice, which means a majority of us are actually pro-life. Four, we're socialists and communists, and they know nothing about what social democracy is. Oh, and they call us Nazis because, yeah, that's part of the thing in terms of the projection strategy. I'll get into that in just a second. Um, remember this old one? This comes way back from the 80s and 90s. We're all lazy, welfare recipients, don't want to work, and all that kind of stuff. That we're unpatriotic. That's number 6. That we are anti-religious. And there's a lot of us that have become more anti-religious because of the way they've used religion against us with a level of hate that doesn't have anything to do with Christianity whatsoever. That we're bad on the number 8. We're bad on the economy and just want to run up deficits and all that kind of stuff. Okay, there can be a debate in terms of what generates making the economy work best, blah, blah, blah. That's that conservative liberalism that goes back, that's fine. But there are so many of it, actually, that area right there of the of the economy is where you got the biggest change mechanism in terms of who's going to be listened to because of the the business thing and it's a and the suburban women and all that kind of thing. So that's why Biden is so concentrated on it. Anyway, Democrats are much better at the economy. Give me a break. So then they always lie about us. Democrats want to raise taxes on poor people in the middle class, and then the final of the old time myths that have been going around long before Trumpism is that humans don't have anything to do with global warming. So those are the 10, and this is the kind of thing I want to put in a website, right? And they all can be easily debunked, but this is the meat of decades of how the conservatives and the Republicans have run their whole political machine. Okay, so then you get to this new extremism thing, and that's where you go into Trumpism, because then you have Alex Jones. He's like, for instance, Sandy Hook didn't happen. Well, he's a part of the entire machine with the disinformation machine of Duginism, because he is actually met with Alexander Dugin in Texas. He's had him on his show on InfoWars and on whatever blog shows he's done multiple times. And, he's had him at conferences talking with Texans. So if you've got the guy who's saying promotes extremism talking with Texan strategists, Texans directly on the ground back in 2015, 2016, maybe even earlier, then for sure you're going to end up with a vigilante justice bill, because they were right there talking with this guy who's straight out of, it's actually said he's a direct fascist. But this is neo-fascism, and if you call them fascists, then you get the bounce back, boom, 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 which is desired. And this is where we got to move away from in terms of the constant punching at each other. Anyway, I could go on and on. I actually wrote a list of who all those guys are, that are just killing us, or, that are, it's OAN, it's Newsmax. We know them. We know who they are. We know it's Fox News, so I don't have to spend a lot of time. If anything, I would love to see this website happen so that all those people are there and their history is exposed and why they do it and how they profit. Please. Anyway, now I wanted to get into a quick overview of the Duginist strategy um, in terms of the pumping up tensions. I mentioned before the Nazis, that we are the Nazis now. Because why are we Nazis? Because we're socialists, right? So, as long as we are the Nazis, then they're the good guys and we're the bad guys. Because we have to be the enemy. And that's the whole thing at all times. Democrats are the enemy. And we are the bad guys. If you listen to this, Marjorie Taylor Greene, like saying Biden has to be impeached, like for what? She doesn't talk about what. It doesn't matter because they're just saying he's the enemy, he's a dictator. So it's flipping projection. And this flipping projection is something you will see every single day from all of the rage propagandists. It's at least 95% flipping projection. And most of the time, they will accuse us of what they do based on some little teensy grain of truth or little seed of it, like in that rumor I just talked about with the pilots. Well, yeah, Biden just said that all the military has to get vaccinated. Of course, not until November 2nd. They've been vaccinated for everything forever, and it's no big deal. But, they'll take that and then they just turn it into dictator, dictator, dictator. It's just like unbelievable. But as long as there's a little teeny grain of truth, then they go into plausible deniability or whatever. The conspiracy theories, one part of that is that they are actually in a conspiracy. They're in a conspiracy with some dictators around the world. Now, I'm not going to start listing all of them because I don't know any of the details. There's other people that know. That could be something that could be put into the website if I could get people supporting that idea. But yeah, it's just constant blame game, constant distrust of media, constant hypocrisy, constant contrarism. Just be contrary. That's at all times, boom. It's absolutism, and it's, black and white. There is no nuances. There's no in-betweens other than the fact that he can be somebody like Trump could go and talk out of two sides of his face. Because the thing that is amazing about what the disinformation machine has developed is they can target. They can target in ways that we're not as good as, because they know who the people are that will fall for which BS strategy. And so they've got their bubbles and they stay within those bubbles. And so you've got a whole bunch of evangelicals who do not consider themselves racist in the least. They are definitely not racist. They're the Clarence Thomas, Herman Cain, and now Larry Elder. Anyway, it's like, they can't possibly be racist. Well, their bubble doesn't talk to the Proud Boy bubble and the others, who are just completely and totally over the top racist. And it's just like, So so you have these politicians like the guy that got this whole thing going on, talking out of two sides of his mouth. And so then we've got a situation where we're calling Trump a racist all the time, and then the evangelicals say, "Oh, he's not racist. Look at the people he supports that are black, and we're not racist." And so it's constant boom to the boom to the boom, which is Duginism, the desire that was created back in the 90s, and it works. They even have gone into the lefties, the conspirituality movement. They got one of the inside ways they got into the conspirituality movement was through this natural news stuff because we we hippies, we love our natural alternative medicine. Yeah. And so then uh, they kind of like just invaded straight in there. And I mean, I've talked to people that are part of that whole scene. You know, they do the workshops, and they're just fighting with each other like crazy because they're against the vaccines and they're against masks. And if you're enough of a believer, then you're going to beat it without having to worry about um, the mask. I mean, that's a big part of the strategy is like, if you're a believer, you will not get sick. And so that's hitting the left as much as it's hitting the evangelicals. And it's being pushed really, really hard. And it's being pushed by the mega churches really hard. And that's why you have 10,000 people a week that are still dying, even though they could have their deaths easily prevented. Uh, yeah. Anyway, all of this stuff I would like to have laid out neatly, clearly, lists in a website, the Democratic Debunker. If I had somebody to help, if I had somebody that knew how to get some funding, how to write proposals, because should actually create a couple of jobs for somebody who knows the tech and knows how to do these things. Get the truth out. Okay, I'm going to go to my last idea, and then I'm going to call it a day because today is 9/11, 20 years later. And I will be definitely honoring in somber tones what this is about. Okay, I did too. Conference. I want those people who really know what's going on, that are experts, to get together and write a report and explain the disinformation that I'm talking about. Explain this strategy. Get it out there. Get it to the Congress. I don't care in which direction this were to come, to get these people together, to get these experts together. If it came through Brian Stelter of CNN, who's constantly calling on, and I've seen these guys on his show, reliable sources. Anyway, it could be from an institution. I just want a conference and a coming together of the experts on disinformation. I don't care who does it. Just somebody has got to get these guys together because they know what's going on. And let me give their names again. They are Jason Stanley, a professor that's in history of fascist propaganda, and Timothy Snyder, a history professor on Russia, and many other things, from Yale University. Luke Harding, who has written many books and was a correspondent in Moscow. He knows what's going on. He's British, and he's worked for The Guardian. He still does articles. Malcolm Nance, I want in there. And anybody and everybody else to just get together, whether it's a panel discussion or in a documentary. These people who know what's going on need to be listened to. It can't be from somebody like me or some kind of website, but there's got to be a way to create an expertise meeting on specialist of disinformation. There's got to be a way of the meeting of minds to get this clearer so that people understand what's really happening to them, because people don't get it. I've watched these journalists all the time. They don't know. They don't connect it to like how deliberate this all is and why. Everybody's going, this is unbelievable. Why is this going on? I don't get it. You know? Well, and I'm going, well, it's by design. This was all intended. And that's even more unbelievable. And somebody like me is going to be even listed as really crazy. But I'm not. And it takes me the courage to get out there and say, okay, let's do something about this, because it might be, well, that sounds nice, but I don't have the time and energy to do anything. So we need to find ways to get the truth out more effectively, more targeted. That's all I'm trying to say, because it's a better solution than just going at it online with the trolls. That's the purpose of what I'm talking today. In the end, I'm leaning towards healing, which I believe comes from appreciation, forgiveness, and acceptance. I want to thank all of those people I know online, and I'm not going to start listing all the names because there's dozens that I contact regularly and hundreds that I know for whatever reason. But I really thank you for listening. Forgiveness is something I got to forgive myself to start with, that I have such a hard time saying what I need and want to say, get out there. And I'd like to encourage forgiveness of the disinformed, because it's the disinformers I want us to go after, those who are feeding the lies. The disinformed are just, they've been disinformed for decades, in different ways. They didn't, incrementally, as this got into the extremism, they didn't see what was coming. They don't get it. They don't understand. Uh, it's the people who are feeding them the lies that we have got to expose, and expose their motivations, and expose how much money is in it, and expose how corrupt it is. And then we can get to a point where we can forgive some of the disinformed, because they don't get it. They don't know. Some of them do, maybe, but most of them don't. And then we come to a level of acceptance. This is all the time I've got today. Uh, and I've got a little cold coming on. Something's going on with my phone. It's time to be somber for 911. I thank you for listening. I hope I will have enough energy to be in contact about my ideas for the expertise conference on disinformation or the Democratic Debunker website. I'm just hoping somebody will say, oh, good idea, let's do something. Let's do something. Thank you.